Hello, today is June 4th, 2022. I'm meeting today with Mr. Fred Wiese at his home in Highlands Ranch, Colorado. My name is Brad Hoops. I'm the interviewer for the Northern Colorado Veterans History Project. Welcome, Fred, and thanks for sitting down today to tell your story.
Well, thank you.
Let's start out, if we could. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your date of birth, where you were born, a little bit about your family.
Well, I was born on 30th of October 1922 at Bloomfield, Nebraska. And it's a farming community in northeast Nebraska. Small town, 1,500 or less. From my birth, I lived with my mother and her maternal parents in a farm home just on the edge of town. Small farm. My grandfather had come from Germany, and my grandmother, and they met in Bennington area of Nebraska. And I think there were some problems at birth, I don't know. I never did know my dad. So I was on my own after almost 16 years at home. Grandparents had both died, and my mother had to vacate that property. Family had sold it all, and she went off to Ames, Iowa, and left me there in that town to stay with some of her friends and finish high school.
Now that's, I'm sorry to interrupt, but that's right in the thick of, during that time, the Great Depression as well. How did that play on things?
Well, it was tough for them, but I didn't know it.
Oh, okay.
I didn't understand it.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't have shoes a lot of times, but that's the way it went.
Boy.
Anyhow, I graduated Bloomfield High School in 1940, and did some odd jobs around town and so forth, but I was not a good student. I was not very attentive to anything I did. I was kind of lost, and I finally came out of it somewhat. I found out that I had to do my things by myself and figure them out. Well, I was working on a farm for a little bit just before I went down to Lincoln, Nebraska, and there's where I got that name Fred. A German family. They all spoke German, but they spoke a little broken English. And a little baby boy, probably about 2 or 3 years old, could not pronounce my name. So he just called me Fred. And that stuck.
So what's your formal name then?
Wilferd.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So at any rate, I got down there and found that, I enrolled in Nebraska U, and at that time it was probably $25 a semester or something like that. And Mom would give me $150 for the first tuition, and first semester tuition, and room and board and stuff like that. And that was more money than I'd ever seen.
Huh.
And at about Christmas time, my front teeth, started giving me trouble. And one day they swelled up, and that's when I evacuated from the school. I got out of that school quickly, and they pulled some of my teeth, and as a consequence, I stayed out of school, and I blew my money. So I had to find something to do. I had to find a place to stay. A friend of mine from high school and a class ahead of me had moved down there to go to school. He's enrolled. And he was staying in a funeral home, a room in a funeral home. And I asked him, is there any chance I can get in here? He said he went to ask her, yeah, they took me. So I did some just menial tasks, and among them was to the work that preparing to bring some people back from surgery, and we would use that vehicle for carrying them around, and I was at the assist on that. And secondly, I would dust the caskets and things of that nature. So I hung around there a good deal, and we had a rooming place above the bombing room. So that was just a rooming place for overnight employees to work and live in it. So from there, I did some little menial tasks again to get some food in my gut, and with that, I moved to one day. Well, we were up in the living room, and I heard President Roosevelt make his speech.
Oh boy!
And I tell you what, I can still see that very, very clearly. I can tell you the names of the guys who were there. And one was Schwartz, and another one was Max, and then my friend Dean, and two other guys, but I forgot who they were. But I can see that picture right now, looking west.
Wow.
And, you know, those things just burned a spot in me. Okay, from there on, I went to my mother, and I hadn't seen her in 3 years. I went over to Ames, Iowa, and with that, and I got to Ames. That I had visits with her, but she had schedules that she had to keep it and working. So I fiddled around and I asked her one day, "Mom, what do you think about me enlisting?" Well, she didn't like that idea at all. I said, "Well, if I enlist, I might be able to get a better position, get some better positions in service." And so she finally approved it, and I was only, 1941. I was 17.
So you needed her signature.
Yeah. And so I went down to Ames, down to Des Moines, to the recruiting station and the enlistment place. And it was all the same place. It was at Fort Des Moines. And as a process, I was accepted on the 30th of December, 41. And they told me, "Come back tomorrow and we'll swear you in." So I came back then the following day, brought all my clothes with me and everything, and then sworn in. I was in the service from December 31st on.
24 days after Pearl, right away.
Yeah.
Well, now what branch did you enlist in?
Well, I didn't know anything about
Oh,
it.
really?
I didn't know anything about anything. Huh. And so someone had walked up to me. Who it was, I don't remember. I don't recall. But I do remember him asking me, "What do you think you can do in the service?" I said, "Well, I can probably drive an ambulance." And I never saw a piece of order of any sort that told me what in the world I was going to do. I got no assignment that I know of.
Huh.
I don't know that I ever saw a piece of paper on it. But at any rate, I did the menial task around the hospital, and it was just a station hospital. Now, Fort Des Moines at that time was a cavalry post, and they still had horses out there and some cavalry men. And boy, that was soon to change. So I had a sergeant that befriended me. He liked me for some reason, for the things I did, the way I handled myself, I guess, whatever it was. And so he gave me small duties to do. Among them was one day I said, I've got nothing to do. He said, well, go clean up this basement. And the military stations at that time were all pretty much brick buildings. So I went down there, and there's nothing but bins, but only about 6 of them in the basement, and a big wide landing stairs coming down, probably about 5-6 feet wide, so that I guess the troops could get in there to it or something. And I found a whole bunch of shoes in the disarray down there. And so I stacked them, I sized them and did the whole thing, put them up at Harris and all. I found a pair of Garrison shoes. Now that's different from boots that they were working around in the field. It's a shoe that only officers and people that are confined to working right at that base would wear. And I found that they fit me. Huh. So I went to the sergeant and asked him, would I be allowed to wear these at all? He said, yeah, I guess so. So I shined them up and I put them on. And from that day on, I was special in that as an enlisted man. And I got some special duties to do, and I did them well. And I was a guy that drove the ambulance once in a while, drove officers around on the base, and I drove them downtown. I don't know what they were inspecting at the time, but I'll tell you later. Anyhow, all that transpired, and that pretty soon I got a first stripe. And I hadn't been in the service 4 weeks, 4 months, I guess, 4 months.
Huh. You didn't even go through basic training or?
No, I had nothing. Huh. No boot camp at all. Huh. And I was assigned to ride with a doctor as a medical team on troop trains, carrying new recruits from the West Coast someplace east of here. And I did that twice, and stuff like that. And one day the hospital started getting more people, more things going on. And I think the troops had been taken out of here by that time. And in the process, we happened to see a bulletin. I had a good buddy, by the way, by that time. There was a fellow that had a serial number 3 digits away from mine. And by the way, I'll tell you, that number was 170-3626. I've got those, that's a cold fact. And he was 3 digits away, Mike Markson. We became pretty close buddies. At any rate, we saw this bulletin on that said they wanted to have somebody go take a course and become a tech in the surgery technician. So we said, we'll do this job. And so they sent us to Denver, to Fitzsimmons. Fitzsimmons was new. And man, we were in tall cotton. We had never been that far away from home.
Yeah, right.
And we rode on the train, and you get to eat on a train. Oh, that was special. And in the interim, we did a good job. We got out of here, went back to the base. We saw a lot of differences. People with some enlistees and some women with uniforms on, the wax that started coming in. Well, we got into our job, and I didn't get much more than bedpans to carry. Huh. And I said, that's not for me. And Mark thought the same thing. So then we looked at the bulletin board, and sure enough, there's another one up there for pharmacists, pharmacist techs. So we go back to Denver. This is all in 1941, 42. And at that time, we went through that course in 2 months, and 2 months plus days. Came back to Fort Des Moines, and the whole darn place was changed. They had added a whole lot of buildings in the medical area. There's 6 barracks buildings, and the place was full of women. And we had a new pharmacy, a new place, and a new building for the pharmacy, and an examining area. And yes, I don't know. But at any rate, we had a pharmacist. He was a staff sergeant. By that time, we knew what the stripes meant. And we also got a promotion to T5, which was a corporal. Holy smoke, we were really coming up. One day at the window appeared a colonel from the Air Corps. He had his wings on, and he was a very young-looking guy. So after he left, I said, Mike, we ought to get some of that. And we saw a chance. And so we asked around and found out that the recruiting station was downtown. That's how you get in to make a move. So in a week or two, we got time off together and went down there and took a look at that. And Sergeant says, and he had many striped stars. I don't know what he was, but he had more stripes than I'd ever seen. And he said to us, well, you two dummies are going to have to take an exam. We got to find out how smart you are. So we took the exam. They put one of us in one corner and the other corner of a huge room, so we couldn't cheat. And we had different questions, yes and no, multiple choice, all kinds of things, scientific, I guess, and stuff like that. We finished them, and the sergeant said to us, you stay here, or remain here, and I'm going to check out these reports, and I will dismiss you when I get back. And so he came back. He had a different attitude. He looked at us and he said, you two dummies did real well. Somebody will call you. So that's what happened there. 2 weeks or so later, we got that call, and we went out to Fort Dodge to get down to Fort Dodge camp. It was just west of Des Moines, and we had to take a physical. Well, I came out of it okay, but Mike was underweight. And the sergeant, as he was leaving, as we were leaving, said to him, hey, Sergeant, I don't know who it was, if you get yourself some bananas and come back in them. So it's that time, we'll weigh him again and see if he's got his weight up. And he went back out at a point at a time, and the sergeant said to, as he's leaving, he said, well, you're really, I want banana short, but I'm going to pass you. I'll never forget that. And a couple of weeks later, we got a call from the commander of the new station hospital unit. The redheaded Lieutenant. I remember him so well, Lieutenant Morrison. Second lieutenant, brand new second lieutenant. He didn't know how to stand up yet. At any rate, he put us in a brace and we yelled attention to it, and we jumped up. We were scared. We thought we were in trouble. He stood there at attention. He read a riot act at us, and then he got up, and I didn't know what was going to happen next. He stuck his hand out. He said, "At ease," and congratulated us for our initiative. He said, "You're going to Air Force."
Wow.
So we got our orders and transferred out to Santa Ana Army Air Corps Station. That was going to be our pre-flight school and examination. In the process, we went through a whole lot of battery of tests. And I had been selected to go to pilot school. Mike had to go out there and find out he was going to get washed out.
Oh boy. Huh.
And so he was at the navigator's school next. And I understand he washed out of that. And then I lost track of him. He was supposed to go to bombardier school, but I don't know, I never saw him again. Anyhow, next thing was calisthenics and all the battery of classes we had to go through, I had to go through, which included aircraft identification, using a key tell type thing, and various things like that. And we had I suppose it was probably about 2 months and some extra days on every one of my stations. So it went from pre-flight, which was at the base, to primary, which is going to be down at Thunderbird 1 in Phoenix, in Glendale. Thunderbird 1 or the Thunderbird 2, just over the next ridge. And they were civilian airmen's training places. So we were taken over by the Air Corps. And we had 1/2 day flying, 1/2 day of ground school, and then it would alternate, and it would alternate back and forth. And when you're on the flight line, you would be 1/2 day, 1/2 of that flight time would be wing walking, and starting and cranking the engine, cranking the centrifugal wheel, and all those kind of things.
Well, let me interrupt and ask, prior to this point, had you ever been in an airplane?
No.
Yeah, okay. Just wanted to make that known.
By this time I had a venture.
Ah, right, yeah.
Yeah, from the Two Point. And I was surprised that they took me. But that was not a problem, they told me. So on our first flight out, Mr. Walker was in the front cockpit, I was in the back. He showed me how to use the seat belt and the harness. It was on my back for the chute. I was sitting on the chute. And it had a long handle on it, and a kind of a curved handle in some ridiculous way, so as you'd be sure to get a hold of the right thing, I guess. Well, the sleeves on our flight suits were very loose, a lot of space in it. We took, Mr. Walker said, are you seated and you have your belt on? And over a Gosport. You know what that was?
For those that are watching, please explain.
Okay, Gosport was a funnel that he talked into and a hose that went back to my ears.
Oh, okay. High tech.
High tech, yes. Well, they had no radios.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he gave me my lecture, and so we got the engine cranked, and then they went and walked us out to the runway with the tarmac. Took off, and then we were flying around, and he said, "Now we're going to do a loop. Do you have the seatbelt fastened?" I said, "Yes." "Yes, sir, I do." I said, "What am I going to do with these teeth in case they get sick or if they fall out?" He said, "Well, put them in your pocket, for pity's sake." And so I did that. And in the process of doing that, I probably swept up my arm over that doggone seatbelt.
Oh boy. Oh no.
We got into the top of the loop. I'm hanging there with my legs. I had never sped them that far before in my life. So I hit the side of the cockpit. And we, you know, when you feel that you're losing the thing you're sitting on, you get to wonder. And so we got through that one. I'll tell you something, I never ever did that again.
Oh, man.
And from there on, he gave me some good lessons, and I soloed in short order. And this thing had a very narrow ear, and I never had a ground loop with it or anything like that.
Huh.
And you ground looped it, you're washed out. And I had a mantra of my own, you know, study hard and do it right, don't get in trouble, or the people back in Bloomfield will say, "That narrative well, I never thought he'd do it, be able to."
Yeah, wow. Huh.
And that was my whole mantra.
Yeah.
And whether I should have said that or not to myself, I don't know.
Huh.
But I prayed a little, and I go back again. Before I went to high school, I had gone to the general school for 5 years, through kindergarten to the fifth grade. That's 6th grade years. And then in the 6th grade and through the 8th, I went to a parochial school for my church. And then I had to go back and enter that school again at the high school level, 9th grade. And that was difficult for me because I didn't know those kids too well.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Now, another thing, my parents, grandmother and mom, they refused to let me play any games or like that. So, because I had to come home and do chores. So that was it. It was just cold. That's something that I knew was never going to change. Well, let's go on from there. From past that course, and they shipped us down to Minter Field in Bakersfield, California. The BT-13. And what do we call that thing? Oh, it doesn't matter. We got to that, and we're soloing. We're getting a check out on that. And when we solo, we got to go do some night flying alone. We got to, and that was going to be a scary situation.
Sure.
And some of the guys spun out, and one of them crashed into a rooftop of a barracks. Stuff like that happened. That's unfortunate, but it happened.
Did that play on you at all? Did it
Yeah, it played on us.
Yeah.
Made it paid us to pay more attention. And as we got a little bit more brave with ourselves, then pretty soon we were taken to a field away from our main field, practice area. And at night, we were given in the quadrants, all 4 quadrants had us stacked. at a certain altitude. So you would fly up to your altitude and then stay in that same quadrant and fly in a leg, make a turn, go around like that, square. It called, you come down and you fly back down and land, and somebody else takes a chance at it. And that was my night flying. Well, that airplane didn't have a radio in it that I recall. Yes, it did. It had a radio. That was the first introduction to radios. And we had to crank our flaps down, stuff like that, and the flaps were something new. And canopy overs was a different thing. So it's a totally different aircraft.
Sure, yeah.
And I enjoyed that airplane. I got after we got our solos, you know, we had a brand new one day. I took it up for my solo time, and I thought, well, what the heck, I'm gonna see what I'd heard about these guys doing that dive. But I also heard that to get out of the dive, sometimes you can't pull the stick back from it, and you use a trim tab. Well, I started in a dive with a new airplane, and my gosh, the first thing I knew, I passed the red line. So I did my trim tab deal, and I came out of it fine. Now imagine that, I'd never do that again.
Oh boy.
And I didn't. I never did fly the AT, but that was the advanced trainer, which was a T6.
Okay. Uh-huh.
And BT-13 was the only thing I flew. Okay, we finished that course, and we were put on a train and we were sent down to Marfa, Texas.
Now, did you have your wings? Did you get your wings there?
No.
Okay, okay.
No. Now we're going to advanced school.
Oh, okay.
And Marfa, Texas. We got off the train and stopped out there. We thought I was out in the desert. Saw nothing. I said, everybody off. It was about 5 o'clock, 5:30 in the evening. Got there. Where are we going to go? We had everybody take your barracks bags and your whatever else we had. Maybe the football gear, I'm not sure. We had to load that on our backs and carry that down to a mile away from where we were. And seemed like a mile. And it was a station out there near Alpine and Marfa, Texas, between those two little towns. But it was way out by itself. And so we got this very beautiful twin-engine airplane called the Bobcat. We call it the Bamboo Bomber. It was all wood.
Oh, really?
Yeah, all plywood. We did solo work on after we got checked out, and did solo work, and we would fly two students at a time. One in the cockpit as a pilot, the other one just sitting over there. I'm not sure they had controls on both sides or not. Anyhow, we did some cross country with it. We did some night flying. We did some, that was first introduction to link trainers. And we had to prove our ability in a link trainer before we go on night flights. And finished that. And now we got our wings. February 44, yeah. And orders, I came out as a flight officer instead of a second lieutenant. And we found out later it was because the TOs were overloaded with second lieutenants. And when some of them finally got some more slots, we were up at another place. Anyhow, as a flight officer, we were sent to Roswell Air Field in Roswell, New Mexico. I don't think it had another name at that time. And we saw this big B-17. Oh, that goes back to Miller Field. We were flying one day. I know we had radios. I was doing stage landings, and we got a call. Go back to your stage slot, which was up somewhere else, and we've got a B-17 coming in here. And so they had to clear out the whole area. The B-17 had landed across across the tarmac. It was longer one way than it was another. So they had to take the longest route to get the most of the runway they could do. We got down on the ground, we got that bird down, and we got called to come back in by our tail number. And after landing, I asked the captain, I said, "Captain, sir, is it be available for us students to go and look at the airplane?" He said, "Yeah, get the logs done and we'll let you go." So we did that. And I walked over there and I walked down through that airplane to all the buckets, turbo buckets, and just spinning like the dickens still. And it's hot. And I stood back and looked at it from in front of the airplane, back at the nose, and said, and I saw women up there. One woman sitting in the cockpit, another one up on the wing checking the fuel tanks, another one climbing up to do something else. What is this all about? I found out that women could fly an airplane. I had heard of it, Amelia Earhart, but I had no idea that these women were doing that.
Yeah.
The wasps. And so that was my first introduction to B-17. So now I get to see one up close and personal. Well, we're flying the Fs out there at Model F at Roswell. I think I flew an E at one time.
Well, now, sorry to interrupt again. All through your flight training, were you given the option to go single or multi-engine, or did they just assign?
That's something else. On the stage landings in Miller Field, I hit the tall poles, and they had a rod across it. And if your tail wheel got down too soon, we had stage landings to come over that and get down on the ground as soon as you could. And I didn't do so good that first day. And that captain said, "Wiese, you're too damn slow. You better do this better tomorrow or you're washed out." And so my brain started working a bit that night. And I did them perfectly the next day.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. So anyhow, that taught me what you just asked.
So were you given the choice whether you could go?
No, he said, "No, you'll never be a fighter pilot."
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay.
And so a single engine. Now I could have gone to two engine, but if there was something in me that they saw, they put me in fourth.
Gotcha. Okay.
And we did that, and I did that pretty well apparently. And we got orders then that I should go to Lincoln, Nebraska, after we finished that course. Lincoln, and pick up a crew. And I was named as a pilot. And I got a young guy named Kurt Ash who was my co-pilot. He was about, maybe 8 months younger than me. And I had more military time than he did. So I think that had a little bit of bearing. Anyway, we got our crew together. We got our crew announced to us.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have to go to Rapid City, South Dakota for our crew training, crew indoctrination and stuff like that. Well, everything went well, ground schools and all stuff. And in the meantime, I'd learned to fly the radio beams that we had at that time, and nulls. And that was oral null, is what it's called, oral null. And that's how you get it to the beacon and knew where you're going to be. At any rate, I flew them pretty well in the B-17 and got up to Rapid City. We did another check with the captain and Phil, my engineer, was with me when I did that stick there, or instrument check. So we had to go out and pick up the oral nose, the leg going into the beam, and it projected out one at a certain degree in either side on four legs. So I mastered that pretty good, and I thought I was going to be good. I had to go out and find the windage and all that stuff, and find the center of the beam where I got nothing. And the minute I get it off, it'd start beeping N's or A's. And what I did, I said, okay. He said, take me to the center of the beam, take me into the beacon. And it was just north of the field. So I flew that thing and I pointed down and did it, and then we had to go out and take the reverse course. Now you're switched oral null. It's backward when you come back in. So I did that, and I hit the beam again. And when we landed, the captain gave me a thumbs up. And I remember that my flight engineer said, I think we got a good crew. And that was about the end of that. Well, now we have to go learn how to do formation flying.
Oh boy.
Well, formation flying, when we got up in the air, I had my right spot. All of a sudden, my airplane just shook like the dickens, just shaking everybody. What in the heck is going on? We looked around, couldn't find anything wrong with changing power setting, did flaps up and down, checked the gear up and down, and changed the props. Nothing would take care of it. I fell out of the formation right quick. And I went back to the base. My flight group upstairs, the commanding officer of that bunch, and Wiese said, there's nothing wrong with your airplane, get it back in here. I said, sir, I can't do it. This airplane's got to go to the ground. And we got in. I don't know what kind of signal I gave. Probably a Mayday, I'm not sure. Anyhow, I landed, and the first thing I saw was an engineering officer running out there, and he said, everybody off this airplane, except you. Pointed at me. He said, I want you in the right seat. I'm going to show you this airplane has got nothing wrong with it. We fired it up again and took off, and the morning it broke ground. Mayday, 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 Mayday. We went all the way around that circuit. We came back in, and never heard another word about it.
Oh, jeez.
Anyhow, that was the next time, and it happened again. We're on the cross country, and we're just probably about 20, 30 miles away from Lincoln. And it happened, and so I landed in Lincoln. They had to build one up there. That was a depot, and they still had to build a new cover for it, didn't they? It was a battery cover, and the battery cover was the cover where access to the batteries, and they were inboard of the #2 engine between it and the fuselage. And this darn thing was a battery cover about so wide, I think, something of that nature, and it came over the leading edge and had its root was above the center line of the root of the wing. And apparently those Zeus fasteners let go. And the wind got in it and bent them up. And that one little piece of aluminum bent up that high, that wide, just caused all kinds of commotion.
Wow.
So it had happened again over Lincoln. We landed, and that's what they had to make one there. And of course they had to follow specifications, which they did. And I think 2 or 3 days that I was there, I assumed it was that long. It seemed like a week or something, and we got back in there, and the next time we got back up to South Dakota, and didn't happen again after a while. Then I got a new airplane, and darn if we didn't see that happen again, but it didn't get it bent very far, and they were able to squeeze it back down and reshape it a bit. And we got a new airplane, and we were told then that the crew had to do several things. We had to do swing the compasses, and the compass swing is to identify that the difference in whatever the aircraft had in metal, that the pointers would be in the right spot, etc., etc. And do a night navigation equipment check, and do another swing up in the air, night and day, and on the ground. And there's 3 different swings, as I recall, and many other things, and see that all things were working right, and get a log count on that, and have it fixed. And then we got orders. We've gone through all of our formation training and all that stuff. Okay, you're going to be leaving here at a certain hour. You're going to fly to Grenier Field in New Hampshire and land in our RON there. We did that on the right time. It was what, I think, about the 16th of September, 15th. I've got it in here. It's in the file. Yeah. And then we got up early that morning and flew up to Goose Bay, Labrador. That was the next lake, RON there. And well, I guess I didn't know, I don't remember. I got sick. And I was in a hospital up there for 3 or 4 days with a bad cold.
Oh boy, huh.
I guessed. Anyhow, Phil's remarks in that catalog tell you all about that. Anyhow, we had at, I don't know, 12 o'clock? No, 12 o'clock at night take off. I thought that doesn't seem right. But it was something like that. And we had to go up over Greenland and then over to Iceland. By the time we left Lincoln, we had Bombay tanks in it and extra oil and stuff like that. And so it was tough to draw on it at these other stations. And we also had a puppy.
Oh, yeah.
An old trick trying to get a dog over there, I guessed. At any rate, the guys were working pretty well. And we get about 2 hours out of Goose Bay, going north toward Greenland, northeast, I guess. And I called for a fix, navigation fix. See where we were, how far we were going, whether we had a tailwind or not, whether or even we're close to where we were supposed to be. And it came back. Navigator said, I can't make my section work.
Oh,
There's no light in it. And boy, we fumed a lot about that. Our whole crew did. So they had briefed us about such a thing happening. They briefed us that we should line up between BW1 and BW3 some way and get the compass setting and head that way for some timed flight. And start looking at a certain point in time for the station. And we got there to Iceland almost on time. But we were angry with that navigator. Found out the son of a gun had not checked his section as he was supposed to have done it in Lincoln. Well, that was the second time we found him in trouble. He'd been listening to radio compass all the time. Radio compass would swing to any station, and he going through the dial, he could find a station that had music on it. And that's all he wanted to do. And he had been a little bit lazy before that, but probably smarter than brick, I don't know. Anyhow, we're there, and now we're going to take off the next day.
Now, sorry to interrupt, but is it Greenland or Iceland? One of them you have to fly into a fjord. Isn't it kind of strange? Isn't it kind of scary?
It's not. I don't suppose it is, because I don't see anything there about it. I don't remember.
Oh, okay. All right.
I do remember getting down.
Okay.
I do remember the takeoff.
Oh, okay.
Okay, the next morning about, I don't know, just in the dark, we're to take off and head for Valley Wales. But we had some points that we could radio to and get our radio set on. Well, I took off. We got to our assigned altitude, but in the takeoff, we've been warned about the northern lights.
Oh, wow.
The northern lights will confuse you and make you think that you're flying right, you're going up and you're going down instead.
Wow.
And after takeoff, apparently, I was looking at the lights more than I was doing what I should do, watching my instruments. And I could feel it was down different. I looked down and below the glide line and pulled that thing up right quick and started climbing, and we're close to ditching right there. But we didn't. Go up to our altitude, assigned altitude, and I put it on, I put the autopilot on, turned it on, and set it up, and co-pilot helped me. I said, okay, Kurt, you got it for 15, 30 minutes. I'm going to take a nap. I woke up an hour or more later. Everybody's asleep. We have no idea where the heck we are. We didn't know if we had any drift out toward the ocean. And off our supposed line of flight. Well, I want to tell you, we couldn't make a radio contact of any sort. So I cranked it into the east. Right, we flew almost directly east on my needles, compass needle. And then we finally got a signal, and our radio operator was a good sharp kid named Wilferd Daniels. And I knew he'd find us a way. He did. He finally made contact, and we were given landfall directions, and flew them, as we were told, wide awake now.
Yeah.
And we landed in Valley Wales. Now, I don't remember anything except the first thing I saw when we got the engine stopped was the guy aboard the airplane. He comes forward and he says, "First thing I want is your dog." How do you know I had a dog? Well, he knew. Everybody had one, apparently.
Huh.
And then he says, "I want you all off here and take your belongings with you. The airplane is mine. The truck's waiting for you."
Huh.
And he says, "You'll get your orders inside." So we got off and we did our thing. I remember we spent the night there. And the next day the guys were just mad as the dickens because our dog had gone on. And we got on a train and we went down, and the train took us to Peterborough, England. And at Peterborough, we got off the train. Now where do we go? There was a truck waiting for us from Polebrook. Polebrook was my station, apparently. That's what the directors, the orders called for. And all this happened, and we were there on the 25th, I think, of September. That included my days in the hospital and all. So we left on the 15th or 16th from that city. And I'm 21 years old.
Yeah.
I'm still 21. Anyhow, we checked in with the CO then, and then they assigned us to the 508 Squadron of the 351st Bomb Group, 2nd Wing, and 1st Division, Air Division, 8th Air Force, ETO. Okay. Then we didn't start the flying, but we had to go through very much a whole string of orientation, and for both the EMs and for the officers. And I had to go through link training again, and we had to do that frequently. So that was good, I guess, but we didn't like that link training somehow. We had minimal radio stations around that we could use. And so you had to work off your station beacon, station's frequency, entire frequency. And you're just so far out, there was no more answering. Anyhow, we did a lot of things. We did gunnery training. We had to fly up to Wash, and guys were shooting at us. So, shooting at a flag being towed and stuff like that. all that stuff that you have to have. And then at that station, we got there, I'm backtracking. We immediately were assigned to barracks.
Oh, right.
The Quonset huts, and they were close to the flight line, and they were close to the Oak Club, base Oak Club for the flyers. And the enlisted men were in a similar situation, but away from us. Outside our door, we had bunkers that we could jump into in case they had air raid. We had them all over the field, and particularly where the masses of men gathered. And we had our parachute tower where they repacked. We had a chapel. We had PX and 2 hangars, and we had 2 big hangars, and we had machine shops, and the airplanes were dispersed all around the perimeter of the field on hard stands. That's one thing they did have. They did have hard stands. A lot of airfields didn't. They had gravel or something.
Oh, okay.
Well, not gravel, but tar.
Okay.
Now, this field was called Polebrook, and the town of Polebrook was right close to us. And there was a little town between them and Polebrook. And then there's a bigger town. And so, go the other way, there was another little village. And that first night we got there, we got checked in, and we all decided we got to get off the base and take a view of this place. We went north to Peterborough, north or northeast, and we got to this little place, and all I heard was cluck, 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 cluck. You hear that going on, and it was the people walking with hobnails in their shoes over the cobblestones. And we had warm beer.
Yeah.
Never heard of that. Smelled like wet socks. Well, we did several duties on the airfield. We flew, and we did slow timing engines at night and in daytime and stuff like that. And then we had weather stand downs. Then we had group stand downs. And we had 4 squadrons, 3 of them could go on a flight. The 4th one had to stand down. Well, you had to go by the number of airplanes you had. And many times we drew on different squadrons for airplanes when we go out on a mission later. So finally on the 15th of October, we got our first mission. I thought it was earlier than that, but we've been flying around.
Yeah.
So you lose track of that stuff. Our first mission went to Cologne. And we were early on, that whole system of leave time depended on you getting having 25 missions, and it was broken down 5 missions. I believe that you get a little leave time, and not R&R, but leave time. I think 3 days is what I remember. Maybe it was 4. So that was early on. That was from 1942 on. Now we're in 44. 42, they had no airplanes on the base except British The British B-17s were flying before we ever flew them.
Oh, really? Oh, huh.
Yeah, for that. And they went out to bombing ranges in the daytime at 30,000 feet, probably close to the ceiling level of the airplane. And they never hit a target, ever. And they decided that was not an airplane that they could use. And they had them for, that's part of their first year. That was the old E model, the first E model that they had. This is all information I gathered in the last few years. The magazine over here of war stars.
Oh, okay.
And it was printed. It's printed in England, in a British colony. Anyhow, that's where I found that out. It surprised me. So, like, I guess our guys got there in '43, early '43, and then by that time they had evacuated that base, and now this is going to be the first base we got onto, and our detachment flew in there and settled on that base in 1943. Now, immediately after they got there, that whole group was transferred down to Africa, to Italy, to fly for that African activity. And they started filling it up with new devices. And the 351st Bomb Group was assigned there. So we had that base to ourselves. We never got transferred out of there. And began flying our missions. Cold as the dickens that winter. Lots of fog, a lot of snow, lots of clouds in the skies. And they had stand downs because they couldn't get up there and find a target and such as that. So we were late getting going. October, middle of October. Now we're up to 30 missions.
Yeah.
Well, we still had some aircraft coming up. German aircraft are still molesting us a little bit. And flak was pretty darn accurate already. We're into that series of things, and we got to I think the 28th mission. As I remember, Kurt was about to have a change. At any rate, they said it's going to be 35. So we said to ourselves, well, we're going to have to stick it out. It got to be in a sad situation. Most of us just didn't really want to go fly.
Yeah.
But we had to do it because otherwise we were going to get court-martialed. That was my attitude. And so we just gutted it out. Now, let me tell you something, the food was pretty good over there, especially on a flying day. That bunch of crews got fresh eggs in the morning, no powdered eggs, fresh eggs, and we got special thing, we even got some milk, I think, and instead of powdered milk, and had good meals.
And your living conditions, Quonset huts, they were comfortable?
Well, Quonset huts were comfortable to a point. In a cold winter, you were given a ration of peat and coal, and never enough to, and one little pot-bellied stove for the whole darn barracks. So everybody had built up the ability to live with a cold. And we did it, and some of the GIs would steal coal. The officers wouldn't better do that. We get our butts in trouble. And so the GIs were known to do that. GIs were known to do a lot of things.
Yeah.
But couldn't blame them.
Yeah.
We had, all the way through training, we had the best of the best. They're better than any other unit in the world, except maybe the Navy. And the food was always good, always a clean place. It was always done in training just to make us gentlemen. So sure, it didn't work too well on me. But found my way around. Going back over to England. I don't know where I was. We had probably in the right dead middle of the early part of the first month of 45. We had a screening mission, is what it's called. All the time I call it flag. We had to get up above the rest of the crews, and we had 6 airplanes. I was leading one flight, 3, and the other guy was following. And we lost an engine, lost part of the power of an engine. And we were at 31,000, I think, and lost our way. We had chaff, aluminum chaff.
Mm-hmm.
And we were flying ahead of a bomb run.
Oh, okay.
And then we lost our engine. Lost that engine right at foot number 4. Something happened to it. And the top kept spinning. And we couldn't change the pitch or anything else. Nothing. So we had it fall out. And we did, and we fell out, and first thing you know, we're in clouds, we don't know where we are.
Oh,
So we took our general heading west. And I don't know what happened to the rest of them, but I guess we got rid of our chaff and got out of there. But Phil makes a remark in there about that. And he said we flew back in heavy rain at 1,000 feet. Why we were down that low, I don't know. That's probably the time I went down and dropped down to the north, to the channel, just to see if that weather had any buoyancy to it. And it did have. So we could be sure that we could at least fly at that altitude. So that's one time I did it. And the guys were scared out of their shoes. That night, that day we were flying that mission, I looked down at the temperature gauge, outside the temperature gauge, and it was just a skosh under 80 below Fahrenheit. The engine would just lock up on you if you shut down for just a minute.
Oh, man.
And how the guys survived backside. And the fuselage, I don't know. We had the best of the best as far as heated clothing was concerned, and uniforms, sheepskin on leather and sheepskin, the real stuff. And still, it was terribly cold. But the minute And on other missions that I flew, the minute my feet got real cold, we'd hit the IP initial point, and that's where you all had to settle down and fly that level as you could, and right through the flak and drop your bombs. And my feet would warm up like the snap of a finger. All of a sudden, I guess he just had a surge of new blood, pushed that other stuff out.
Now, up in the cockpit, did you have heaters in the cockpit, or were you like the men in the back? You wore electric suits as well, or
we wore electric suits.
Okay.
There was no heat in the cockpit.
Okay, all right.
There was no heat anywhere in that airplane.
Okay.
You wore suits and clothing to fit it. How the devil those kids got by, I don't know. Anyhow, that was a problem for everybody that winter. And the clouds were so thick so often. We had been out on a mission, as I recall, about just past the middle of the month in January. Yeah, January. No, December. I do remember now. And we had to divert to a different station. And we diverted we had to take a mission. And we diverted to another station. And we ended up at Bath, England. Some air base right close to it. And we were billeted in Bath.
Oh, well, yeah.
And they had houses in one sector of one quarter of the circle around that had been just built. It looked like apartments, and they stacked up the hill that way. And they assigned us to one of those billets that was open. They had not had anybody living in them. And I don't know if we had a heat or not. Probably not. But we slept in there. We were there for 4 days. Well, it was the fourth day. We had another call. All aircraft on this field that are flyable and have a crew will fly today. It's going to be a maximum effort. I told them I'm not going out. Our guns haven't been cleaned or anything.
Yeah.
Our guns were not really that important anymore. But I tried to fake it. They wouldn't do it. I said, somebody came and said, your butt's going to be in trouble if you don't go. So I said, okay, yeah, we better do it. We got in that formation, we flew it out, and we were not with our own group. We were just tagging along.
Yeah.
With another group. We got through the mission, got back to the coast. I'd take off for Polebrook. And we could see the ground fog had been lifting higher all the time as you got out that way. And to the north of me, about 50 miles, we oftentimes would see smoke coming up in the afternoon. One day I flew over and I knew what it was. It was called Fido. Have you never heard of it?
No.
Well, I later learned what that meant. Fog intensive disbursement operation. Fido.
Huh.
And what it was is two troughs, one on the other side, far enough away from the airport, from the air strip, that the big Lancasters could fly into. The Lancaster was a bigger airplane than the B-17.
Right.
The B-17 would not go in and land properly because it had more lift than a lot of airplanes, I think, for its size. As we were going along, I couldn't get the darn thing to go down. I got to that, well, we decided we'd better go up there and land. And so that's what we were trying to do, go into that land. And land on that and get it down, because there was no place that you could go to. The fog was so thick.
Jeez.
And so, unfortunately, we got it down. I dumped a stick on it and forced it to go down. And as we landed, touched down, we come to a wall of fog. And we rolled into that thing, and no more than get in there, you hit the brakes and got it stopped. We were nearly at a stop. And there's no light in anywhere. And it was, the folks had to shut it down at that time, just before we landed. Oh, I would have never seen the day of light again.
Wow. Jeez.
The next day, we flew into that, we sat there for a long time, the engines off, and soon the vehicle came by, and they were stunned, I suppose. Next thing we know, there's a whole bunch of guys out there with their pistols around that airplane. They were wondering, who are you? How'd you get here?
Wow.
And so we got some identification to them. Both were American flyers. And we had landed there because of the fog. And it was cold and it was freezing, I guess. At any rate, they took us in after identification verified. Took us into their operations section and cleared us and invited us into their Christmas Eve program of dinner and speeches. While we're sitting there listening to all this stuff, and it boring, a little bit boring. I didn't understand the people too well. They're talking our language, but differently.
Yeah.
And a lot of commotion outside, and my enlisted men all came in there, busting in there. We want some food. We're hungry. And soon they were seated with us, the officers, and this was a very astute bunch of people. I mean, they have their formalities.
Yeah.
When they go to dinner and they have an event like that. And with the Americans, we were loud and brash and demanded stuff. Hey, the next morning, I had reported into my phone. The next morning, sure enough, get up and it's just frozen solid. We had at least a quarter of an inch, I think more close to a half, maybe even 3/4 on that airplane. The weather was socked in at our base, socked in there, but he began to break up there a little faster than it did at our base. And I kept calling about it. And that's one of the little tricks I did do that I should have never done. We kept bothering him over there at our base. I said, no, you stay put until we call you. Well, it's Christmas Day, for crying out loud. We wanted to go home. We had been in a cold place, a strange environment. We wanted to get home. So the guys, in the meantime, I'm calling the station again and find out from one of the other fellows that Phil, my engineer, had the guys out there pulling the props through. And, that's necessary to do. And they both pulled them through 2 times, two circuits of the engine, each engine. And came back with a message that Phil thinks we can start the engine. So I said, go ahead, you and Kurt go out and do it, and see if it'll run. I'm going to stick with this bunch over there at Polebrook. They got them started and run them up for a while and then shut them down until they're warm. And run it shut down. And then the other crew, the rest of the crew said, let's see if we can go home. I said, well, I don't know. We'll have to check what the thickness of the ice is. But I decided we would go. It would blow off and do something. The airplane was light. We still had some of the fuel left. So we went out and got in that airplane, and they had announced that it was breaking up somewhat at our station. It didn't tell me not to stay there that time. And so we cranked it up and did it right where it was, because there was no ice up there, right under it. And cranked it up, and one of the guys got out and got the chocks out, and we turned around on that runway, went back to the same way we came in, and got turned around again, opened the side windows, and got a position that we're right in the middle of the runway. And Kurt looked out the window. We had ice on our windshield.
Oh, man.
And took off. And broke ground. We stayed here, the ice breaking loose. And chunk came back and hit on the window frame of Kurt's side, and a little piece of it hit him in the jaw. And just drew a little blood. We got off and we closed the windows and knew we had altitude with the instruments. Got up to our altitude, and my bombardier by that time had become a pretty darn good navigator. So he navigated us home, and a radio operator was on top of it. We called the tower when we got down there. It was about an hour flight, the time that we put in. We made it a straight-in landing and parked the airplane in a hard stand. And I'm sure that that crew chief, if he's still alive, still scratching his head. There was a lot of ice on that airplane. It should never have flown that way.
Huh.
Never. Any ice. But we did it. I didn't ever report it. But now we had an airplane back home. We got into have a fantastic dinner and a fantastic time to get back in our bunks.
Oh.
And so Christmas was pretty good. Anyhow, we had 30 missions at that time. Co-pilots were given an option to fly out his co-pilot seat or to take a crew. And he decided to take a crew. So he had a crew, and he flew his first mission successfully. And I think on the second mission, he was going over the islands going east. I thought it was the Frisian Islands, but I told it was over Holland or someplace, that he was hit by flak.
Oh, boy.
And the airplane went down. Now, I didn't see it, But just what I surmised. There was one chute that came out of it from what the crew saw. And may have been more. And anyhow, I landed right side up. And it went through a pool of water and stayed afloat. It didn't stay in the water, but landed. And I didn't know anything about really what happened. Because all the time I'm having to fly in formation. And we were really saddened by that. But I finished my missions at Plauen, Germany, that last mission. We went to Berlin twice, and a variety of sights. I didn't see the ground at any time. I was always flying formation, looking ahead.
Yeah.
Somebody got to do that.
Right.
And I didn't trust Kurt to fly across cockpit in formation. Not worth a darn. If we were on the left side, he could fly it. But I could fly both sides. I thought I could. And so he evidently did his job. And he was a good flyer, he was a good guy. He and I owned an automobile together in Rapid City. So we had commonality. But back to this last mission, we get back to the base, we're relaxed, and I find out that Phil had not been with me on a couple of missions. I had not known that. Somehow I passed it by. An engineer is an engineer. Phil also reminded me that he'd kicked the bombs out of Bombay one time, had to go back and kick them loose.
Jeez.
One guy down the crossways coming out the door. He had to get down in there at the bottom of the rail and kick it loose. Him sitting on that walkway through there.
Yeah.
Stuff like that I didn't know about until later. But he was a daredevil, and he talks in his log about, oh, this was fun. This was fun. I didn't have any fun today.
Yeah.
It was a bad day.
Huh.
Some days were good. But all the time I know he's scared of the dickens.
Of your 35 missions, I'm sure it was a mixture of milk runs and tough missions. I imagine the Berlin missions were usually the toughest, wasn't it?
That was a 9+ hour mission, always. And we had some we had to go through the flak a second time.
Oh, and what's it like going through flak? I just...
Scary as a dickens, yeah.
Oh.
And rough. I'm going to divert a bit here.
Okay.
One of the things I learned right away was that you can't possibly use a bomb sight and do any hitting with it if your airplane's moving.
Yeah.
You get into a flak situation, what good is the darn thing? If you're at it that way, they're going to fall out that way and make an arc. But they're not going to be anywhere in the target area. And that's what they found out, apparently. So we didn't have navigators with us for a long time. Bombardiers were toggeliers. And they toggled on the lead ship. After a certain number of seconds, they toggle, and they release the bombs. So they didn't use the bomb sites effectively.
Now, when you're under a flak attack, would you try to fly around flak clouds, or would you just have to fly into them?
I had to fly in.
Oh, jeez.
It was just fly as straight as you can, and if the lead aircraft did it, we would follow them. And why? We were just like an appendage. What you do, the rest of it is going to follow and do.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was a problem. Now, you get in there, and one airplane's got one wing down, and all of a sudden yours goes down. You know, you're coming together. You gotta be able to sense that. And I'd kick rudder, I'd cross-controlled so much of the time. I pulled the throttles back on one side completely and fire them back up, just to get the airplane to settle down, go back. I don't know but that had some bearing on my getting through there. I don't know. But you get a burst under you, you go up. You get a burst of top, you go down. And you get two bursts, opposite direction. You got a mess.
Jeez. Wow.
And it didn't go high, it was probably 5 feet, 10 feet. But it was there, it was happening. And it was a pretty severe thing. Now, we had fighters come up rarely at that time.
Oh, wow.
We didn't get in until October 15th.
Yeah, right.
And by that time, the fuel was getting short. And they didn't have pilots, I'm told now. So we didn't have too much opposition. We had ME-2 162s come through a couple of times, and they came up from the rear.
Those were their jet. Oh boy.
And they came up so fast. They go through there, no engines out there. How'd they do that? And that was the first we'd ever heard of it.
Yeah, right.
And it was just astounding to us. But they never fired a shot that I know.
Huh. Wow.
Because they were probably running like the dickens to get home.
Yeah.
And we'd be someplace, I don't know where, probably over past the channel. Because I don't think they ever came over England.
Yeah, right. No. Yeah. Well, I've always asked other pilots. To me, there was 3 parts of the mission. There was flying to the site, being over the site, and then coming home. And always asked pilots to talk about the 3 segments. And they always said the first 2 you were just so busy you didn't really think about it. But so I'm going to ask you about the 3rd segment. When you're finally home, you guys land. You had a meal or a shot or something, and then you went to your cots. And then it's quiet. And you decompressed. Would all that come flooding back to you, or were you able to put it behind you?
We would decompress a whole lot the minute we got off the target. And we still had to fly over that stuff, and we still had flak below us if they wanted to shoot at us. We were in the right place at the wrong time. But we begin to decompress when we get down to 12,000 feet. We light up.
Oh, really? Huh? Oh, okay.
And we get out of our oxygen mask. And, if they shoot us down now, we don't have to worry about oxygen. Well, if you can get that out of the way, you're not going to fire either. And I would always tell them, you can take your oxygen off over the intercom. But we had a good crew. I had lovely people. Albeit they were full of mischief.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
And my crew, early on, we had, the mission was nominal, I guess, and we had gotten lost again. And navigator didn't find our way home. Bombardier finally found our way home. And the crew got mad at that, or angry at that. And they came to me and they said, Lieutenant, if you don't get rid of this navigator, we're going to not fly anymore. So I went into CO, Captain Jim Stewart. Not the one you think, though. His name was James, too. And Jimmy Stewart would tell me, I told him what the problem was. He said, well, have you known about this a long time? I said, yes, I have. I said, we're not going to fly with him anymore. And he took him away. I never had another navigator except on special missions. And we oftentimes had extra people aboard. We oftentimes had minimum people. Because men were not available like we thought they would be. Or something, because of sickness, one thing or another. So, finished our 35 missions.
What was that like when you hit the landing strip on that 35th? The relief, I can't imagine what that must.
It was total relief.
Huh.
You know, I had no enmity in me about it. Just glad to get rid of it. Now to get home.
Yeah. Oh boy.
And so we waited around. You know, we're probably there a couple of days, and we got orders to go to a separation station, and not a separation, a staging station, staging area. That's what it should have said. And where that was, I don't recall. That didn't mean a thing to me. We're just going to go there. And my bombardier showed up there at that same staging area. And evidently, a couple of my crew members too. By that time, we were down to 7 crew members. That was all, because Kurt had taken 2 people, and himself, that's 3 out of the 10. No, there were 6 of us. There were 3 out of 9. I just not counted them just now. There's 6 there. There were only 3 left because the navigator had not been there. And maybe all of them were aboard that staging area. I don't know that. But anyhow, we were assigned to come back by boat.
Oh boy.
USS America. And it had been refitted for troop carrier. And they put all the officers in the forward part of the ship for sleeping bunks and for food, etc. We had the best of the best again. The poor GIs were down in the belly of the whale.
Yeah.
And down in a hole. And each officer had a hole assigned to him that was in there. We had probably 15 in our stateroom, big stateroom. And near the what is it, prow of the boat. Is that correct? Prow? Is that right? And at any rate, the sea gets rough.
Well, that leads to the question: how this landlocked Nebraska boy survived? Did you get your sea legs, or did you get sick?
I got sea legs and got sick both.
Oh, did you?
Most of us did.
Yeah.
So but we had the food dining room was what had ordinarily been the ship's dining room, and it was forward too. And so we experienced different things down there too.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And you go down to your hold, and it would stink like the dickens because people had vomited down there and done other things. And the poor guys were stacked.
Yeah.
I don't know, about 8 or 9 high in there, and bunks that were probably that far apart, or maybe about for the big bellied ones. And it just was a cattle car.
Oh, man.
And we got home, I think we were about 8 days on sea, because we took detours. We had good scanning and equipment apparently for torpedo ships. I mean, torpedo.
Oh, right, the U-boats. Yeah.
The U-boats.
Yeah. What time of year was this now when you're heading home?
No, this was in late February.
Oh, yeah, so war wasn't
March.
over for a couple of months yet. And
Yeah,
okay.
that's right.
Yeah.
So I got finally got to landfall. We didn't know where we were, but they did. Evidently it was near Camp Lee, Virginia. The best I found out, it was Camp Lee, Virginia area. And we got off the ship, and we disembarked. We were taken into a big, big auditorium, which it might have been a exercise room, or could have been anything. And we were given a lecture about being back in America, and I'm not sure where we got examined, but everybody had to go through an examination again. And as we were finishing that up, I was with a W on my name. I was near the end of the bunch, and they separated us by officers first, and then the enlisted men came up. And maybe they take them out first, I don't know. But yeah, we're walking now. We've been told we're going to go to the mess hall, and we're going to have a lunch, or breakfast, lunch, I think. By the time that all happened, lunch or dinner in the evening, what? It was. We were marching. I heard some commotion behind me, and I was near the end, and I thought the voice sounded familiar to me, but I didn't know what it was. Finally, I looked back one time, and I noticed this guy's got on, looked like a tailored GI uniform. Tailored. Fit him like it's supposed to. A nice looking guy. I took another look at the red skeleton.
Oh, really? Huh.
And so we marched up there, got into dinner, and we were sat down, and German POWs were our servants.
Okay.
And we got a lecture item that told us, do not drink more than 1 glass of milk. We're all starved for it. Why? It'll make you sick. Well, I didn't pay attention to it. I'm going to have 2. I got sick as a puppy.
Oh, did you really, huh?
Oh, you bet. And right outside of my window, which was a high, what do you call it, like a transom window.
Okay.
And it was open. It was warm already. And my head was up against that wall. Sick as a pup. I couldn't do a thing. I couldn't get up. I couldn't stand up. Dizzy and all that stuff. And Skelton's doing a show out there.
Oh.
And I never lived that down in my whole life. I always admired that guy because he can make you laugh. And he wasn't raucous.
Yeah.
And anyhow, then we got our orders to travel on leave 10 days after arrival at your site. And so that we also got our assignment order for the stateside. At that point, I saw my mother for a few days, and we traveled to California on a train. Two of us did.
You and your mother?
My mother was there. That's where she worked.
Oh, okay.
She had moved from Ames
Okay.
to California, working for a fella that worked in the movie business, but his wife had passed away and she left him with 2 kids that needed a home tender. And Mom was good at that. And so I went to see her that. We got on this train, of course, first thing we did, we got a bottle of booze, 3 of us. And that was another big mistake. We traveled, we got to Des Moines, Iowa, and Phil got off. That's where his folks lived. And made some other stops, and a lot of other stops, where people were meeting the soldiers, the airmen. Finally got to Salt Lake City, we lost another one. Or didn't lose him, he got off. He was a good morning kid. And then we got to the West Coast, and Tom and I got off. Tom was my bombardier, Tom Parsons. Bill Gukas, Kurt Ash was my co-pilot. Bill Gukas was my engineer. I already told you who my navigator had been. I had a guy from New York that was named Ed Lukaszuk. We used to call him Lucchese because we couldn't understand that language. And we had Ken Grazer, we had Max Graham, we had Burl Green, who's a turret gun, and Willard Daniels, radio operator, and that was it.
Wow.
I remember those guys so well.
Now, through the years, did you guys ever have any sort of reunions? Did you keep in touch with anybody?
Well, I had seen Tom a time or two. I'd seen Phil once, but this was after later. I'll tell you how I got to see them. And I remember in Denver here, I came back to Denver for something. And why I was here, I don't know. But I found out, I looked in telephone books all the time. In those days, everybody was listed.
Yeah, right.
And I found my buddy from Iowa, about the pharmacist.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I saw him. He lived in that section up there just below Northland.
Thornton.
Huh?
Thornton.
No, Thornton? Is that Thornton up there? Okay, that's Thornton, that's where he was. Yeah, I guess. He'd been going to school there, and he went back to Iowa to live, and that's the last I heard of him. But yes, then later, I did beat the other guys. But I go on. You got some more time?
Oh, sure, yeah. Oh, yeah, we.
Okay. I was sent back to Dallas in the 5th Ferry Command. So I bought a 38 or 36 or 7, I don't know what, LaSalle convertible. LaSalle has a Cadillac hang-on, and I had that convertible for a while. Drove back to Dallas. We were learning to fly C-45s and C-47s and stuff like that, and to ferry aircraft. And so the war is over in Europe, and we could begin to get B-17s coming in at Lubbock, in an old field that had been shut down. All they had up was a strip. They had a tower and no food, no billets to sleep in, nothing. They were still there, but nobody there to attend them. A B-17 landed and there at Lubbock. And we were told we're going to ferry those to Kingman, Arizona, at ops in Dallas. We were told that. Take 2 officers, 2 pilots, and 1 observer and engineer. And you go out there and you take the airplane as it sits, with the fuel that's in it, and fly to Kingman, Arizona, and you'll be transported back to do it all over again. Well, Kingman, Arizona had no food then, no billets either. Now, that's why they turned us around and brought us back.
Yeah.
So we were on candy bars and Cokes for a long time.
Oh, boy.
And we did it for 10 days in a row. And then we did it another time, later. Soon we got orders. Al Ingwall, my buddy then, and we were flying together most of the time. And Al and I would switch off. One time I'd fly, he'd fly, and so forth. At any rate, we began to get used to this business, and we landed at Kirtland Air Field at Albuquerque. We figured out if you go in there later in the day, you can stay there overnight. You get a good meal and a good bath and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So we would go do that. When we did that on that second group of people, go around, and on per diem. My gosh, we're getting $3 to $4 a night. That way we made money, each of us. Well, we did that for a while, and then we got a call. I got a call one day while I was standing ops in Dallas. You're to go over to Fort Worth, and you'd be a co-pilot for something. For something. That's about what they said. So they transported me over there somehow. I don't remember going there. I mean, a trip over there, but it was the same field that the factory was on. They had a factory over there when they made 24s. Now they're making B-32s.
Oh.
You ever heard of that?
Yeah.
Okay. So we get in this airplane. What is this thing? It just looks so different. It looks like a B-29. Maybe it would look like, sort of. The pilot knew what he's doing. I was the co-pilot. Matter of fact, just a figure, just a person in a seat. Makes you fly better, huh? I didn't know anything about that airplane. But I read the pre-flight list and the pre-takeoff list. and I could do that. So that helped. We flew this brand new B-32. Had been accepted by the Air Force. They had to accept them. They always shut down the factory, I guess. Flew it to Walnut Ridge, Arkansas, to the guillotine. Got there, the officer, this was my airplane, assigned it off to the guy that flew it, and it went to the guillotine. Got the engine off, dropped them.
Wow.
Started chopping up the airplane. Brand new.
Wow.
And it was a quieter, much more quiet than the old airplanes were. Okay, we continue. Get back and we're checked out in B-29.
Oh, wow.
They sent us down to Birmingham, Alabama. War in Pacific had stopped. When did that happen? What was the date of that?
Well, the bombs were dropped in August of 45, and then it was officially over in September.
Okay, September that we went down there. And so we were ordered to go back and make up a crew of 4. 2 pilots, engineer, and an observer. Well, I made up several crews like that. And then we would get our orders, go to certain places, and pick up the B-29 and fly them to the junkyard, or wherever they're told to go. We flew all over the nation with them. I'm talking about the whole gang did.
Yeah.
We flew primarily from Georgia back to the West Coast. And a whole lot of them down Dallas area, or southwest Texas, and to a place down at where Edwards is now.
Oh, in California there?
Yeah. What the heck was the name of it? It was a small town at that time. There had been an airfield there. Don't know what it was. It was out in the desert.
Yeah.
We both flew, we interchanged seats. And pilot time, co-pilot time, equally. We flew that for the rest of 45 and into the middle of 46.
Boy, I would think after all you'd been through that,
Well, that was
they would have mustered you out long ago. But
Well, this was 45. I got back in 45.
yeah.
And all this transpired fast, but it felt like it was dragging.
Yeah, sure.
And we did that until the middle of 46, when I was transferred to Topeka, Kansas, myself and many others. There was an airbase up there that had 29s on it. And stayed there until September, I think, of that year. And we're transferred to Morrison Field, Florida, Palm Beach, Florida,
Wow.
West Palm Beach. And that was a hurricane hunter bunch. And I never flew a hurricane, but I
Jeez.
flew close. That scared the devil out of me.
Yeah.
I didn't know B-29 could take the shock like that either. But they flew them in there sometimes. I don't know much about what happened. However, I did go on 2 flights that I know of. One was an evacuation from the field for a hurricane coming in. Another was for going someplace up mid-country for a parade of flyover, right, which we did a low flight on. And that was the last time I flew the B-29. And then I got orders to be separated in December. I decided that I was going to have my deviated nasal septum fixed. And I had a toenail that had been put on me by a classmate before we graduated flying school that needed repair. So I went to a general hospital at Boca Raton and saw my first professional football game.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, as a diversion that they could let us do. And I was kicked out, but put on in the reserves. Okay, I got a captaincy. So I go back to Dallas and to where I had met a girl. I thought I was going to go back and marry her. And got there and she had run off with a Marine. Well, she changed positions. Found out later that I was not a good family either. So it was the best thing I ever did. And did a lot of odd jobs. But at first I went to a mortuary school. I went to get a degree in that. I got my film director's license. I was got a call. I was doing an apprenticeship at a big funeral home in Dallas. We had 4 bombers, and so that means they had a lot of business. And I was doing an apprenticeship there, and I got a call for a job interview out in West Texas. I drove out there to the place, and I might have been approved, but I thought, well, God, what am I doing? There's no women out here. And so I got cold feet. So about that time, I also made a call back to the group in Dallas at the funeral home, and I found out that Bert Stitt was a bomber that I was trying to emulate. I liked the way he worked. He was direct on things. He was not the steadiest guy, but he was good at what he did. He never had to go back and do any patching up. And he had taken TB. And I was just sure, and at that time, TB was pretty prevalent in Dallas still. We had a TB hospital named Parkland, which comes out different later.
Yeah.
We had gone out there to Parkland and done some work in the lab and come back and stuff like that. So we knew about that, and I thought, well, you can get that with a needle prick on a person that had TB, from a person that had TB. So I said, well, to myself, if Bert isn't going to be there for the rest of the time, I ain't going back. I got back to Dallas and I started taking on menial tasks. Auto sales didn't work. I was a warehouse foreman for a while. Found out something about the company. I worked in a truck freight place, and that was a night job. I didn't like that. So, but in the meantime, I met my wife-to-be, 1949, and we made it and hooked it up very closely. And by that time, I had in 1948, I had a call to get the reserve meeting. You haven't been to one yet. So I had to get my uniform out and go to the reserve meeting. And that reserve meeting was at the base there at Hensley Field. And so from there, we had a few more weeks, and we had a camp out away from another base. They had C-46s there, 4 C-45s, 47 C-47 as well. And no more B-29s, nothing big. We went through that, and because of that, I knew I had a uniform. And I get a call, we got to have another meeting like that. By that time, I'd gotten acquainted with, along with a whole lot of the people out there in Hensley, and I got a call to prepare a program, a speech on the life of a person that's lived up near Kathmandu, whatever that is. And what was that mountain?
Himalayas.
Yeah. And anyhow, that is where I had to talk about the priests up there and all that stuff.
Okay.
Life in that area. I did that, and I began to think, well, gee whiz, I've met Harold, Helen's brother, my wife's brother. I met her while I was dating her, and met him. And he had graduated from Marfa Army Air Field a month ahead of me. He'd been an instructor, but he was married and had a child already by that time. And Harold had gone back into service by that time. He'd been kicked out earlier, as I had, and he went back into service as an enlisted man. I think he was probably a tech sergeant. And then I found that he could get back on as an officer again. Got his ratings back. So I thought about that, and we were married in June of 50, and I thought about it. Helen, I think I'd better get back in service. My jobs were not good. So I said to myself, get back in, and all you're going to find is you might get in on Category R, which was reserve, and that dropped you down a step to first lieutenant. But I was still an officer. So I took that, and all the rest of 49, rest of 49, I was out there at the field after marriage in 1950.
Yeah.
Okay. Then I saw a bulletin. A call up that was coming for Korea. So I hightailed it down to Georgia, where the Warner Robins, where the reserve detachment was, or reserve headquarters was, and a master sergeant in there and I argued all whole day. Finally, he acquiesced and gave me back my rank and my rating. So back to Hensley Field and get checked out in the C-46s. They had brought a whole fleet in there. And we experienced something brand new. We had downdrafts, spiked us right down to the ground on landing.
Oh boy.
And boy, several of them coming in for a landing a normal way. All of a sudden they go down, and they bounce back up, and it scared the devil out of all of us. But that's the first time I'd ever heard of anything like that. Blasts, I don't know what they were called, but these were just something that came. All right, we learned to fly through that stuff and use other runways. Might have been something in the structure of the building next to it, which was a marine type aircraft they built there. What is it? The Birdley.
Oh, but,
Corvair.
Corvair?
Was built.
Okay, yeah.
Corsair.
Okay. Corsair.
What?
Corsair?
Corsair. Not Corvair. That's right. Okay, anyhow, go on. We were called up. We did some training while we were there at Hensley. We called up as a unit. We would be moved to Greenville, South Carolina. Well, that meant that was preparation for overseas.
Oh boy.
And I happened to be, when they pulled names, I happened to be the senior officer of the bunch of 10 crews. 2 pilots and an enlisted man. You leave for Far East on January 1st. So we had to get some preparation together to know what we were going to do.
Now, was Helen following you this whole time, or did she stay back in Texas?
No, she was with me.
Okay.
Up at Greenville, yeah. And I'd met another guy named Jack Stone, who had been a sergeant pilot flying the hump.
Really? Huh.
I didn't know about those kind of guys either.
Yeah.
And he told me some wild stories about that. And he was a trickster. He was a joker. He loved to pull stunts on people. So he's checking me out in a C-46. And he and I took a general and a colonel out someplace in one of the airfields out west of us, Wichita Falls, I believe. And then another base that I've forgotten. We take off the second place, and he shut an engine down on the right side. He let it run out of fuel. Shut the engine tank off. And about that time, I mad at him, I couldn't believe it. But I had to control the airplane. And that engine came back on. And just about that time that it came on and settled down again, the left engine went dead. We got it back up. Never would forgive that sucker for that. But he never did have to go into war with me. Or to the field, to war zone. So we went to San Francisco. Fairfield Susan. I just came to me what the name of the field was. Fairfield Susan. And we were to board an aircraft, Matt's aircraft, and the 30 of us went out in that airplane and we got to Japan, landed at Tokyo. I think we landed in Hawaii for refuel, and probably another place for a refuel. I don't know. After we got Tokyo, we were assigned to a little place called Fukuoka, down in southern Japan, on the island of Fukuoka, and the town of Fukuoka. And I can't recall the name of the base. It's in there somewhere in my orders. But it had PSP runways. It had C-46s. We had every approach was over water. Every takeoff was over water, except one. And the old club was up there, and then on the hill above it. So I thought about that. I flew a few missions, and I flew on what we call a weekly mission up to Tokyo. I had not been checked out later on. But the first thing we did, we were checked out immediately, and we were checked out to fly a low-level mission, as low as you can get, and follow the contour of the land. And when you get to that volcano, don't try to fly into that. One of our guys did it. He didn't come out. That was the reason. Kill them all. The airplane gone. And of course, all hell broke loose. And there on, I guess I flew a couple of other missions around, getting my bearings and stuff like that. But I didn't fly much. I preferred not to.
Yeah.
I didn't want to go to Korea.
Yeah, sure.
And I didn't know anything about that zone. But thinking of flying that low-level stuff didn't appeal to me.
Yeah, sure.
So I was walking away from operations one day, and a colonel came up to me and said, I'd like you to become Air Base Group Commander. The Air Base Group at that time was all enlisted people that did the housekeeping for the base, as it were. And I did that for a couple of months. Well, let's see, I guess about mid-year, I got another call. We need you to go to Tachikawa. What's a Tachikawa? That's right outside of Tokyo. Well, we found that we had to take our officers up there. And I don't remember how many crews, but more than 5, I think. And we didn't have 2 pilots, and they sent some enlisted people. Airmen, enlisted people, along with us, and get there as C-124s. You know what that is? That was a big 4-engine, oversized airplane, and it had the clamshells on the front. What a monster that was. They called it a little shaky, but it had the biggest engines on it, 4 engines. And at this time it didn't have anything but standard radio and so forth, but they had an engineer. And we took ground school, and boy, it was a complicated airplane. And you could carry 200 troops.
Wow.
Fully saddled. We could carry a couple of tanks in it, a couple of fire trucks, anything. And the clamshells were huge. They had big tracks on them, they all self-contained, and it had an elevator in it for boarding lots of smaller items, mid-belly. I was checked out in them. You have a 124 there? Or is that one of the props? Oh my God, where'd you get that?
On the internet.
I gotta have one of those. And
Well, you got your model, don't you?
I've got the right model. Oh, the models, yeah, they're up at Cody.
Oh.
I don't have them anymore. Dave's got them. At any rate, I flew them, I got checked out in it. I flew them very little. We were standing around doing nothing. We go to ops, no call today. So we go play golf. Go to ops, nothing. So we go do sightseeing. So one day I had the guts to do this. Now, I don't know where I got it. But I went across the street to the commanding general of that whole complex of all the airfields that were in Japan, supplying people for the war. And I got admitted to him, and I stood at attention, gave him a salute. He said, "Yes, Captain, what could I do for you?" And I went through the litany of, "Sir, we are, a whole lot of us here on this base. We've just checked out in the C-124. Have nothing to do. No activity or whatever. Not enough traffic. Why don't you send us back home?"
Wow.
The next day, I'm called in by my CO. And he says, "You just been elevated to loadmaster." Well, I'll tell you what, that was an exciting job, because that had to be done right. And you had to know how to do it. Well, we hadn't learned all that in ground school, but refreshed in a hurry. So this was a night job. So the airplanes would be ready to go on the next morning. We must have had 10 aircraft on the board on the field, 10 or more. C-124s, then we had some 47s, no, C-46s. No, it wasn't that.
Boxcars?
No, there was C-54s. C-54s. Well, of course, their boxcars came in there too, but this was a post-war aircraft boxcar. And it was 124. We had nothing to do, and just to have a job, I got to liking it. I could do it. I could move those aircraft around on the airport. You know, it had reversible props on it, doesn't it? You could back that out like a car and stuff like that. You had a steering wheel on the nose wheel and things of that nature. Well, we were finally discharged from that post December 15th and sent back to our states. Well, in the meantime, Helen was out with me there. Some wives were, not many, about 3 or 4. And we'd had a good tour.